Going live.
Hey y'all, I'm James Wright, and welcome to the shop. And tonight we're going to have something fun because I have Kevin here with me, and we are going to be learning about how to sharpen card scrapers. This is one of those things that when you're getting into hand tool woodworking, this can be the bane of your existence and trying to figure out how do you actually get this thing to work. And there is no right answer. So we're going to be trying a few different things and seeing if we can get Kevin some good results here. Yeah, so stay tuned there. If you are watching this recorded, then I will have a list of all the questions asked down in the description below with timestamps beside them, so you can jump to those questions if you want to, or you can see the timeline has them all marked out. If you are here live, go ahead and throw your questions into the chat, and Sarah down there will sort them out and ask them as time allows. We'll try and get to as many as we can, but we'll see what we can do. Before we actually get into this, a couple little cleanup things. I'm trying to do these one-on-one lives every so often, about once a month or so. And we have been playing with the different things, and I had a form of a couple people who were interested in it, but I'm going to redo that form because I'm going to change it up a little bit. I'm actually going to create a database, not a database, an email list of people who are semi-local to Rockford, Illinois, because we're probably going to be doing a couple meetups and other things like that. So if you want to be notified of any meetup or anything that's going to be happening near Rockford, Illinois with the Wood by Wright, or you want to be on a one-on-one, then fill out the form. There is a link to it down in the description below. And that will be an email list where I can spit out and say, hey, I'm thinking about doing a live video on how do you sharpen card scrapers. Anyone want to come in for that on the live? So if you're interested in that, throw the comments down below. Also, if we do have a meetup or a Wood by Wright Ren Fair, I'll be sending out an email with the locals to notify that. So, anything coming up that I need to mention?
You don't have to be local to come.
Yeah, you can be however far away. I have a list on there if you want to be notified for one-on-ones or local events. But yeah, I think that's it. So, Kevin here, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what's your background?
I got into woodworking maybe about 6 months ago, and I tried card scrapers maybe one time, and it didn't work out very well, so I kind of just threw it aside and haven't touched it since. So. Okay.
How much woodworking have you done?
Maybe 4 or 5 little projects. You know, stools for my daughter, a box, but not a whole lot. Yeah.
Well, then we're gonna have some fun tonight. So, yeah, when it comes to card scrapers, there really isn't much to this itself, and you'll have a lot of people talking about the steel quality and ooh, this is a really good quality card scraper. That's a bunch of hooey. This is spring steel. It's generic, simple spring steel. Yes, there is technically better steel than others, but in actual function and usability, you're never going to feel the difference. It's basically the exact same steel you get from your saws. Of course, I picked the tall one. So if you don't have one of those and you have an old saw with teeth you don't care about, you can cut one out of this. And I actually have a couple videos on that as well. And so this is basically the exact same stuff, simple spring steel. And you can make it out of just about any saw, even the new hard point steels. This will also do the same. So you can cut up one of these, just don't use the hardened teeth. The next thing we need to talk about is the burnisher. So which one do you have? Here, let's actually focus in on this. Right here. So this is Kevin's. It is, best I can tell, a hardened piece of steel. Which, is that what it said on?
That's what they claimed it was.
Yeah, it seemed pretty hard. It's not quite as hard as my carbide rod, because I can leave a little mark into it from that. But this is all you need. I actually, when I first got into it, I used this, which is a knife steel, and it works very, very well. I know there's vertical ridges, or horizontal, I guess, depending on how you hold it. Ridges running up here, that doesn't affect it at all. You just need a piece of steel that is harder than your card scraper. Now, some people will swear by a screwdriver. It just depends on your screwdriver. If you have a screwdriver with hard steel, yeah, you'll get it. But if you have a cheap screwdriver with soft, mild steel, you're going to be driving yourself bonkers. You need something that is harder than this. And the harder it is, the better. And so that's why I generally use a carbide rod, because it's even harder than simple steel. And then I take it one step farther, and the ones I sell on my website, they're actually a textured carbide rod, so it tends to grab the steel a little bit better. So this makes it a little bit easier. Is it necessary? No. Steel does just fine. You just might need to take a few more strokes of that, and then you might run into the problem of, am I doing it right because you've done a few more and you haven't quite gotten there. That's often one of the problems of you don't know until you have a chance to try it. So let's actually get into this. What I'm going to be using here are, these are the ones that I saw on my website. They're from DFM Toolworks. So if you buy them on my website, you actually get the Wood by Wright brand, but they are just DFM card scrapers. So if you want them cheaper, you can get them on Amazon. On my website where I sell these, I even have a link directly to Amazon if you want them cheaper. But if you buy them from my website, you help out the channel, and yours come with a Wood by Wright logo on there. And yours is, what was the company, McCall?
I think I got this on Lee Valley.
Yeah, it's a great name. Then I've got several others here that this one is this weirdo one from Amazon, Crown and Tools Ltd, something like that. Never heard of them. And then of course my favorite, one of my favorites is the Bearcat, and so we'll be using all of these today. Now for the DFM, I like to keep the blue on here, and if I start in it, I'm gonna hurt that and scratch it up. So just for aesthetic sake, I take some blue tape and I'll wrap it around. It's one of the downsides to it, but I love the blue on it, and so for that, it's worth it to me because it just makes me happy. So I put a strap of blue tape on here, but with yours, you don't need to do that. So don't need to waste for that time. What I'm going to do, the first thing we need to do is we need to take this and imagine that this is a perfect flat side, and a perfect flat side meeting at perfect corners. We want to start with that. Because once you start with that, the rest of the burnishing is easier. You don't have to take it back to that every time, but for the first time you're getting started, you're going to want to clean it up and just make it nice. So the first thing I want to do is I want to flatten the top. Once you do it a few times, you're going to start to get these ridges where you've worn off more material. So why don't you stick it in this vise, and I'll stick mine in this vise. Actually, I don't know if I can. I don't know if the jaw is tight enough on that one. I'll give it a try. And I'm going to grab what I should have grabbed earlier. There it is, my mill file. Does it stick in there? No, it's not going to.
Is there another block of wood we can put?
Sorry, I should have thought about that earlier. Here. There, stick it on there.
About that high up?
A little higher. I want to stick it up a little ways.
Okay.
There you go. You can close it down. Need to adjust some things in that one. Actually, it's still loose. Here. Slide over there. Here we go. My vise has gotten worn out and I need to do some adjustments on it. So what we want to do is we want to flatten it. And the easiest way to do it is just to grab a mill file. And some people are really going to get bent out of shape on making sure that the top of this is perfectly 90 degrees. So what I'm going to do is take my mill file, I'm going to set it on here, put my fingers on the other side of it. I'm just going to run it across there. 1, 2, 3. Because I have the handle on there, I just turn it a little bit so I don't hit it with my handle.
This way?
Yep. Yeah, that should be good. What you're going to look at is you want to look along the top and you want to see if there's any dull spots. Now you could come in with a Sharpie and put a mark all the way across there and just go until the Sharpie's gone.
Okay.
But yours isn't bad enough to really warrant much. Just usually 3 or 4 strokes.
Okay.
And if you feel it, you should actually feel a slight burr on the side right now.
Yeah, I can feel my nails catching on it.
Yeah. And one of the cool things about it is for rough work, if I'm just cleaning out, tear out, I'm not doing a finishing cut, that's all I do. You can now take this off and here. You know, that's palm. I'm cleaning up palm right now. It's not a great burr. It is, it's easily broken. It tends to be fairly heavy, and it's a little bit more ragged. It won't leave a really clean, buttery cut. But that's all you need if you're just taking off tear out and you're cleaning things up and you're not wanting to make it perfectly smooth. Done. Okay, end of video. And 90% of the time, that's all I'm going to be using. If I just need to clean something up, I'm going to throw it in the vise and do it. Or most of the time, I don't even skip the vise. I'll just go into something like this. I'll knock the tip into the bench, and so I'll actually push that into there. And I'll come in with this, without bouncing. Oop, it's bouncing too much. I'm not doing it the way I would normally do it with the bench. Just like that. Just because it's faster than going into the bench. But if you're still learning, just stick it in the bench like that.
Can I ask you a question here?
Yeah, what's up?
So if you're using it bent and it's curved, does it really matter if it's not perfectly straight across?
Not really. What you'll notice over time is you'll actually get this wave, and so if you're bending it, you may still be touching at one point and the other point, but not in the middle where you're bending, and it will just kind of throw you off.
Okay, so it matters a little bit, but not a lot.
Yeah, and it takes quite a few sharpenings to get to that point. What you'll see is a lot of times people will burnish, and they'll never go back and clean it up, and so you'll get these burnished waves.
Gotcha.
But if you're regularly cleaning up with a mill file, you're golden. So the next thing we want to do is we want to, here, let me make sure I'm marking this, because I'm just going to do one side, so I'm saving time. But if I do the wrong side, then I'm wasting time, so I'm going to point my arrow at the side I'm cleaning up. Usually what I'm going to do is I'm going to do all 4 edges. So I'll file this, flip it around, and file the other side. That way I can actually get 4 edges out of this on one sharpening. But in this case, I'm just going to mess with that. Now what we want to do is, if you imagine this, it isn't square. The top edge is flat, and the 2 sides then come up and mushroom out. And so we've got this hook right now on either side of it. We want to get rid of that hook and turn it into a square. We've cleaned up the top. The top is nice and flat. Now we want to clean up the sides and get rid of that hook we just created. Okay. So we're going to take it onto the 1000 grit plate, or whatever your finest stone is. And if you're using a water stone, those work perfectly fine. You're really not going to damage them that much because the hook is so small on this. The scratches you'd put in the water stone just aren't that much of a problem. So I'm going to set it on here, and I'm going to put my fingers at a couple places, and I'm going to move it a couple times, move my fingers another couple times, and move my fingers again. I just want to make sure that I'm scraping all points on this, because if you just put your fingers here, you're only going to be scraping that point, that point, that point, and that point where your fingers are at. And so you're going to move your fingers around and get a couple different spots. And then flip it over, do the same thing on the other side. And just like that, you'll get rid of that burr. Oops, I got a little more to get here. Just going to feel it until it comes off. So again, if you're doing it with a water stone, the amount of damage you're causing is so small that you're going to be flattening it eventually. You're not going to even see it if you then go at it with a chisel or a plane blade. I've got some shmoo on mine that was causing a little bit of issue, but I've got it. Yeah, don't worry about being all the way out here. You can just put it flat on the plate.
Okay.
I mean, you're going to get scratches on your face, but you don't have a nice blue too, so. How's it feeling?
Good. Just a little bit on the corners, maybe.
Oh, that's good. You will still feel the corner, because if your hand has any bit of momentum to it, you're going to feel a hook on there. Yeah, you're good.
Okay.
That's all I need. What was I going to say? Oh yes, now we're going to burnish it. So now this is perfectly flat, perfectly flat, perfectly flat. What we want to do is we want to take the top of this and we want to crush it down. And that's going to push the top sides out. And so you're going to kind of get this mushroomed effect. It will create a little bit of a hook sticking out, but the hook won't be turned over. It'll just be a smooshed top. So put it back into the vise. Now again, I'm normally going to just do it freehand, but when you're learning, it's easier to clamp it in. A broken
Still high
vise.
up is okay?
Yep. Clamp it into the broken vise, and then grab your steel. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it on here at 90 degrees, right across the middle. Put hands on the other side, and I'm just going to mushroom it down. 4 or 5 strokes, not turning the rod at all. I need a little bit more than that. I'm going until I can just start to feel a hook on there. Yeah, that's what I want.
How much pressure?
A decent amount. At this point, I use a decent amount. That's right about where you want it. Not much.
I feel like I've
just
done
a
enough.
tiny bit on there. What's that?
Is that enough? Or I gotta
Yep,
keep
that's
going?
about where you want it. You're just the ever so amount. You're not going to feel a hook on there. You're just going to feel that it's ever so slightly wider right at the tip. Because we're just putting a little bit of material out there. So now that we have that little bit of material on there, we want to actually round it down. So the top of this is going to end up being rounded, not flat. And that rounded surface then comes into a sharp hook hanging off either side. Now this is the step where everyone's going to do it differently. And you're going to hear 100 different methods onto it. And you're going to want to try this over and over again with different methods until you find one that works for you. Because there's two big things that come into this. Number one, the angle of the tool. And the angle you put on this will then determine the angle that you use to scrape with. If you put a very slight burr on it, then you need it up at almost 90 degrees when you're using it. If you put a heavy burr on it, then you're going to have to lean it farther down to get a better hook on it. The other thing on this is that it really depends on your burnisher and how much weight you're putting into it and to how many strokes you get. If you put too many in there and the hook gets really big, then the hook breaks off easily. But if it doesn't get big enough, then you have problems with actually getting the curl. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, so I'm going to put this on here just like I did before, but I'm actually going to turn it about that far. So 3, 4, maybe 5 degrees. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start it here close to this end, and I want to, just like I did, push it down, and so I'm going to have some down pressure on there, but I'm also going to draw it across. So as I get to this end, I'll be down over here. And so if I get with a rod like this, I'm going to grab it on either end. I'm going to start here, and I'm just drawing that out. And don't worry about being perfect with your angle. It averages out after 6 or 7 strokes. And I'm not putting quite as much pressure on this as I did before. Yeah. And you can feel when you compare one side to the other, this side's got a slight hook on it. Now that hook right there, it's just to the point where we're really starting to feel it in comparison to the other side. That's where I would put a finishing hook. So when I'm really cleaning things up, I'll have that hook. It'll last a little bit longer, and it'll be a very clean cut, but it won't take a lot off. And I may still have problems with that on softer woods. Hardwoods, that's fantastic. The softer the wood, the more curl you're going to want on it. So if I'm going to do softwood, I'm probably going to double that amount. And we'll go ahead and make a big one because we're going to try some softwoods. And now I've got a much bigger core on that. So I'm going to do the same thing on the other side with more noise because I don't need to move that around. And go the other way. Any questions, babe?
Several, actually.
Okay, what you got?
DKG30 asks, what brand and size are the diamond stones?
I use DFM diamond plates. They're the 8-inch by 3-inch. I've had these same plates for 6 years now, and I still use them every day. Now my extra coarse, which is somewhere else, which I only use for grinding things, that I've burned through a couple times. But these ones, they are lifelong.
Do you have that link?
What's that?
Do you have that?
I do on my website, but
Okay.
the one caveat to that is I've heard some bad things about them recently.
Oh.
So, yeah. I don't know. I haven't bought new ones to see how they go, and it's kind of one of those things that you don't know until you've used them for a year. So, yeah.
I feel this one is smaller than that one.
Yep.
Right?
Why don't you do a couple more on this side then? And I'm just feeling along it, trying to find, and you might feel at some point that I've got a burr here, or I don't have a burr here, or it's not quite as much as I want. And so the other way I commonly do it, rather than having the vise, is I'm going to put it on there like that. Okay, I'm going to grab this one because I'm usually using this. Now I sell the carbide rod and the ferrule, so you can actually make your own. I have a video on this as well. But I'll use this with a handle. Let me turn this up so you guys can see. And so when I'm doing it, I'm just going to go. And that's all. Because of the handle, it makes it very easy because I'm not actually drawing it straight across. As I go, I'm turning it. And so at this point, I'm touching here, and by the end, I'm touching here. And so it's more just a wrist motion to sharpen it down. That's what I've found I really like. So, yeah, I got a decent burr on there. Let's see what you got on this one. Nice. Let's actually put these to the test. Now, with With burnishers, you think that it works the same way as it does with any other hand tool woodworking, is that the harder the wood is, the harder it is to work. But with card scrapers, the harder the wood is, the easier it is to work. Lignum vitae is amazing. You get buttery curls off of it with the dullest of irons, the dullest of card scrapers. But you try pine, and you really, really got to put a lot of work into it. So let's see what we can get here. Now, the next thing we've got, so I'm going to go ahead and take the tape off of this. Actually, no, I'm going to leave it on because we might do some more on there. Is we've got to look at the angle. So at the angle I'm working on it, the burr I have on there, I know is going to need to be about this angle. It's not going to be much at all. It keeps it very vertical. I'll get really nice, clean shavings.
Those are beautiful.
And so that's what you want. But we're doing this in oak, which is actually pretty easy. So the best way to learn is to start with it straight up and down, and then slowly lean it forward until it catches. And once it catches, that's the angle you need to lock it at. And you'll know that you'll get these beautiful curls. But the problem is most people start it way down here. And at this point, I mean, I'm going to get something, but I'm getting more of these surface things that aren't quite as good. And because my hook is out here, having it lower, I'm just going to actually end up breaking the hook off. So keeping it up at a higher angle keeps that hook longer. So let's try yours and see what you got. I like to push. Other people like to pull. Here, stand it up a little bit higher, where it's not cutting at all. Keep it up vertical.
So here.
Yep, and then slowly tip it forward until it catches. Feel that catch? Mm-hmm. Okay, and then slide your thumbs down a little closer to the bottom.
Okay.
Because right now your thumbs are, here, let me do it like this. Right now your thumbs are up like here.
Okay.
And if you bring them down to like right here, you're putting more pressure right down that edge.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not easy when camera's on you, is it, Kevin? And James makes everything look 10 times easier.
Because you're getting, the previous one was just the dust, and now you're getting that edge in there.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it's not about the turning, but just learning where that rest angle is. And one push will feel perfect, and then the next one won't. Now here, let's try this. So, try that one.
Okay.
See if you get anything better.
It's hard to put down pressure and forward.
And so this is the exact same card scraper. You're getting basically the exact same result. So let me see what I'll get with this one. So I'm putting a good bit of pressure on here. I'm bending it pretty heavily. And I'm just making contact with that small area. I'm kind of getting on top of it, putting some weight down into it, but getting those curls. So try putting a little bit of weight on top of it.
With yours?
Either one. Yeah. And I think that's one of the reasons why I don't like to pull, is it's harder to get weight on top of it. Mm-hmm. But when you pull, it's going to be the exact opposite. But rather than your thumbs, you put your index fingers in there. So the index fingers are in there, and you pull it back towards you. It's a little harder to get the weight on top of it. So that's oak. That's the easy thing.
Oh boy.
A dull one will do that. So let me go up to this. This is Filipino mahogany, which is relatively soft. It is a really hard pine, but this one's more difficult. So I give this 70% chance I'm going to get a good curl with it. Yeah, it's actually really good. That's better than I was expecting. The surface is a little bit rough, so you hear more of a high-pitched sound. Until I get down to this. I'm not getting quite those same fluffy curls because it is a softer wood, but I'm still getting what I'm wanting on there. So give that one a try.
It's going to be embarrassing.
Welcome to the Wood by Wright shop. There you go.
This This one actually feels a little easier. Maybe I'm doing something different.
Well, it bites into this easier. It'll actually grab it easier. And that's about what you're wanting to get for this. So let's actually try pine. This is Douglas fir, and it is horrible, horrible stuff. So if you're doing Windsor chairs, you'll often find that you're using pine for the seat, or something soft in there. And that's where the card scrapers usually. Oh, I don't want to mess with that. So I'm going to try this and see what we get. Oop. Turn this on. Yeah, you'll notice I'm catching here. So I get this line where it catches and I feel like I'm good, but then it pops out, slide. And so it's a balancing act of not letting it sink in too deep. That's almost passable. Not quite. Let me try this side. Oops, sinking in too deep there. That's almost there. I'm still getting some curls, but not quite as much as I'd want. Why don't you give that a try?
There goes nothing. So would I start higher up or?
Yeah, start the same as before. Start high up. I start at the angle I just know what it's going to do because I've gotten used to my burnisher and my angle. Yeah, bring it back just a little more. There you go.
Okay. Yeah, that feels better.
And I think that's probably the biggest beginner mistake is the angle that it's worked at. Once you get that down, everything starts to make sense because you get used to your burnishing angle and you get used to your use angle. Once you get those two, you're golden. So that's straight edge, which any monkey can do that, right? Right?
Did you just call Kevin?
The next thing comes to, what about rounded surfaces, or better yet, concave surfaces? And those really are scary. And they're not. The honest reason is you do the exact same thing you did on that. You just have to do a slight different rotation in your hand. So I'll sharpen one of these. I'm going to do the same thing on the stone, flatten out the face, and then come into the burnisher. And this one I know is pretty decent. It has lost its burr. So I'm going to put my corner into here, and I'm going to mushroom it out. And the other thing with a rounded surface, you only burnish the area you're going to use, because this curvature is different from this curvature. And so you're rarely going to use this curvature at the same time you use this one. So just worry about the area you need to touch.
Do you need to use the file on it first?
I would, if I notice that there's issues with it. But most of the time with this one, I'm going to round it out on a plate because it's just easier than trying to round out on a file. So I might take it down to my like 500 grit. Basically, it does the exact same thing as a file. But this one I know is in pretty decent shape. So I'm just going to use this. I'm going to do the exact same thing, 90 degrees. Here, let me bring this up here. 90 degrees. I'm getting an ever so slight, you want to feel it? Ever so slight burr, not burr, just mushroomed surface there. And then I'm going to grab this, and that same motion, just to the slight angle that way, turn around. And I actually like rounded edges because for some reason, they just grab a little easier. You don't have to put as much pressure into it. And that one's actually grabbing really well. Oop, too deep. Yeah, I'm digging in here and putting too much pressure on it right at the beginning. Got to remind myself, don't dig in until you're going. Oop. Took a chunk out of it. Just like that. Not pretty, but it's pine. I hate pine. So when you're doing a rounded surface, it's going to be the exact same thing. What time is it? 8:30. Any questions right now?
I have several questions.
Okay, let's hit a couple of those. Did you want to try round one?
That's okay.
I'm gonna put
Not on pine.
I'm going to put smoke in there. Okay. Here, why don't you, while you answer some questions, here, why don't you flatten that one out. So use the stone, get rid of the burr on it, and we'll take you back through it. So what questions we got while we're working on this?
Okay, and if you answered some of these, I apologize. Gordon McCall asked, can you use a saw jointer to square up the edge?
A saw jointer? Yeah, that's basically what a mill file is.
Okay.
Yep. Ooh. That should be good for that one.
Clicking
I
wrong
feel a little
buttons.
bit.
Well, you probably still feel leftover from what was there.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. When you're doing the edge, you're just cleaning up any nicks or scratches that might have been in there. So no, put it on flat on its face because you want to get rid of that burr.
Yeah.
What's next?
Let's see. Brandon Chennault asked, are all hand saw steel good for making your own card scrapers? If not, how can you tell?
Yes. Don't worry about the steel for card scrapers. If it's steel, it's generally good. I mean, you're not going to want to use mild steel, but any tool here is not going to be made from mild steel. So, yeah.
All right.
Feeling smooth?
Almost.
Are you ready for another one?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Ken Carlile asked, how long should I expect the hook to last in use? In other words, how often should I be burnishing? And then Alex added on to that, when to reburnish versus full sharpening.
Yeah, it's really, it depends, wildly depends. It depends on your angle of use. It depends on how strong the hook is you turned. It depends on the wood you're working in. There are so many different things. If I do a card scraper like this and I hit all four sides, I'm usually expecting I can keep all four sides going for about 20 to 30 minutes worth of use on most hardwoods at the angle I do it at. Now that being said, I'm going to be doing it in the middle here, and then I'll do it in the middle here, then I'll do it in the middle here, and then I'll do it in the middle here. And then I'll slide over to the side, and I'll do this side here, and I'll do this side here, and I'll do this side here, and I'll do this side here. And then I'll do this side here, and here, and here. And then, oh, I can do the ends, and I can use those. And so I might go through all of those. And so 30 minutes of actual card scraper use might be 3 or 4 weeks of woodworking. And so every time I pick up the card scraper, I'm like, that spot feels good. Let's try that one. Oh yeah, that spot's working. And then eventually I'm like, I can't get anything on this stupid card scraper to work. And then I go back and actually clean it up. Most of the time, if I'm doing a lot of work, I'm just going to use the mill file and just do that initial step. And I'll keep this on my bench. And sometimes I'll even keep it on the bench and just do that on there. And I'll go to town on that. And then I'll come back and hit 3 or 4 times on that. And that will keep me going through 90% of my work. The only time I'm really going to clean it up and do all the other is when I really need to hit that final smooth surface on a piece. Does that make sense? Let me see what we got.
I didn't do this yet. I felt like I was doing it right into the mic.
Cool.
While you were talking.
Oh, you're fine. You want to do this vice or you want to do it by hand? Here, first go straight across rather than trying to do an angle. If you do it right at an angle at the beginning, you tend to crush that 90-degree corner.
Okay.
And then you're never going to be able to get that corner, that sharp edge back out. But if you mushroom it first, with keeping it in 90 degrees,
and that's the one where I
put some material out. Yeah.
On the bench.
Yep. And so you're generally going to want pressure on both sides. But so if you put it in the vise here, let's try this one. It's easier to learn in the vise, but it's faster to do outside the vise. And so with that, you can put a hand on both sides and make sure you're keeping it 90 degrees and you're still putting some weight into it. This is the one where you're going to want a lot of weight down it, especially in that zone you want. What's next, babe?
Well, Alan super chatted.
Oh, thanks, Alan.
Said late fee and Sarah's Cocoa Fun. Okay, wait. Do you remember your joke you said the other day?
Which one?
There was one that I said you have to say it on the live.
Do you know it?
No, that's why I told you to remember. All right, Alan, hang on. I gotta look up my jokes. Here's a question while we wait. Let's see. Chuck Bush asked, have you ever used one of those Veritas wooden burnishing block jigs to do a card scraper? I picked one up at a estate sale, but I've not used it yet. It allows you to dial in different angles.
I don't have the one from Veritas, but I have a similar one from Alma, which is like this. And yeah, it works pretty well. I find it to be more jiggish than it needs to be and very difficult to use on rounded edges, so I just do that. The other thing you'll often see is jigs that will hold the file for you to make sure you get a perfectly true 90-degree edge on there. Who cares? Really doesn't make any difference functional. Make you feel good because you got that perfect 90-degree on there, but the actual functional difference is minuscule.
I don't feel it.
You've got a little bit on this side here, but not much. This side, not much. I think you need to. You're using this one?
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you try this one? Let's start with a little more down pressure right here. And so a lot of times if I'm just using this curve, here, flip this over. If I'm just doing this curve here, I'll just do like this. Just starting that burr going over. And there, I've got that little bit of mushroom. And so now I can use this to draw out that section. So I'm working on this side, and then I can work on this side here. Your thing. What's next?
You ready for Alan's joke?
Yes.
All right. Do you know what happened to my business where I started building yachts in my attic?
What?
Sales are going through the roof.
Yeah, it's mushroomed down enough. So just draw the...
I was just going to do this part because you kind of did this.
Yeah. Fine, do the other section. What's the next question?
Let's see. Krys Petrie. Is there a disadvantage to using the edge of a screwdriver as a burnishing tool?
As long as the steel of your screwdriver is harder than the steel of your thing will work. Like these cheap-handled Stanley screwdrivers, these are softer. So when I run this on the card, I'm going to notice that there's marks in my shank. And that's because this is harder than this is. That's not going to burnish it. Now, if I go back, let me find one that I know is. Here, this one. This is an old flat-sided, and I know this one is harder. This, even though it's flat, I can still get a nice burnished surface on there because I know this is harder than that. When I first got started, I used a knife steel. This actually works really well. Though the harder you get your burnisher, the better your results will be, or the faster you'll get to your results. So that's why a lot of people eventually go to carbide because you get there quicker. All right, let's see. Yeah, that'll do.
Close, but not quite.
Well, as with anything with hand tools, it's always a skill. And the only way you're going to get a skill is by messing up.
Yeah.
You're never going to get the skill by doing things perfectly.
I'm going to be really good then.
If you want to see messing up, go watch my first videos. It's one of the things I like about the channel is that I've kept all my videos. So Wood by Wright is my entire journey in learning hand tools. So here, give it a try. Here, I'll make sure we see what we get here. Pressure's on, man.
No pun intended.
Then be curls. Now, one of the things you'll notice here is you're getting this pilling. Mm-hmm. And part of that is because it's not quite as sharp as it could be. And so if you're doing fine work, you're probably going to want to go back and get that. The other thing you're doing is you're going against the grain.
I was going to ask if that mattered.
Yep. And you'll get more pilling in pine than you will in this. But if you get the skill to get the hook just a little bit better, let me feel. See if there's a spot on here with a little better hook. Yeah, right here there's a nice spot. I can cut down through that pilling. There. Still a little bit, but not as much. Yeah, so there's rounded surfaces. It's the exact same as a square flat surface. It's just rounded. Just takes a little more skill. We are going to get in time. So let's move on to their big brother. So card scrapers, rounded, shaped, whatever you get. They come in all different shapes and sizes. But Kevin, Kevin brought in a cabinet scraper. And these are fun, because a cabinet scraper has a weird shape to it. It has an iron that is a little bit smaller, but usually a good bit thicker. The one he has in here is actually a bit thin. And you will see a lot of these that have card scrapers shoved into them. As long as the card scraper will fit. This one's a little too wide. You can do it with a card scraper. You don't need anything special. But this one has an iron on here. But you'll notice that there's a bevel on this side, and there's a bevel on this side. And there's a couple different reasons for that. Number one, it makes it easier to turn the burr, and you're going to get a longer lasting burr on this with the bevel on there. The downside to it is you're only going to be able to put the burr on this side. You can't get the burr on the other side. So you only get one edge per end. So you can do both at once, and then when this one gets dull, you flip around and use the other one. But then once both of them are dull, you pull it out. You can't flip it the other way and use the other side. So for this, you're going to want to basically start off the exact same way. So you're going to get your plate, and you're going to flatten out the flat side without the plate sliding. And I want to get rid of the burr that was on there before. And this one is nice because it's got some patina on there. And so you can see where you're rubbing, where my finger was at where I was pressing. So I can move my fingers. I want to move them to here and here. Let's try that spot. And now you can see where my finger was here and here. I want this spot here.
Like a built-in Sharpie.
Yeah. There. I've got touched edge along most all that. And if I slide my finger this way, I'm not feeling any burr. So then we have this 45-degree edge on here. And so for that, I'm going to hold it at around 45 degrees. I'm going to do basically the same thing. Now, with this one, you can get that natural Sharpie feel. You can put Sharpie on there if you want. I got to hit this spot here. I'm not getting it there. See, I'm getting rubbing from there to there, but nothing over here.
Is it not straight?
It might not be. Let me actually go over to this. This will just take off more material a little faster. Yeah, see, now I've got sharp all the way along to here. A little bit of a over here not touching. But I think a couple more strokes of this and we should be able to get that. Head it down too low. There we go. Yeah. So now we got a nice clean edge running all the way along there. So we've got a bevel, and now we have an ever so slight hook on this side, on the back here, because it kind of rounded that over. Now the bevel's on this side, we round it back over that way. So now we need to do this. Now the nice thing about with a 45 on there is this is really, really, really easy. I'm going to put it down into my vise. Again, I can do it freehand, but it's easier to learn in a vise. I'm going to grab my burnisher, and rather than keeping it at 90 degrees, which I can do. Actually, no, I'll just do this one at 90 degrees. So I'm just going to put this on here, and I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, and feel that.
Oh yeah.
Because it came up to a point, I'm just taking that point and I'm pushing it over.
Yeah, I could see from right here that I could see the difference between the thick card scraper and this.
So basically, all I'm doing is I'm turning that sharp point into a hook this way, and that's all it needs. That's sharp and ready to go. So now we're going to take this and put it in. Now the installation of this is a little confusing because you look at the plane, and because it's leaning back this way, you think that the plane should go that way. It does not. The plane goes that way. This is the front, this is the back. This single screw is replacing your thumbs. So that screw is putting pressure in there just like your thumbs would. And these two screws are like your fingers pulling back. So we're going to take this, make sure that new edge, put it in here with the bevel against the body, slide it down until it touches the wood, and I'm going to put pressure on this, tighten this screw down, tighten this screw down, just like that. She's ready to go. Well, okay. So the only other thing we have to do is adjust. Oh, I had the wrong camera on. There we go. The only other thing we have to do is adjust how much pressure you put with your thumb, and that's that back screw. So let's open this up one more time. And cabinet scrapers are great for large flat areas. they are fantastic for really squirrely grain, because if you get a good sharp edge on there, you can cut through any amount of tear out. So with this, we can put it on here, and we're really not going to be getting that much unless there's, actually it's sticking out pretty well. We're not going to be getting much. Oh yeah, look, it is working. So what's happening right now is the blade is actually sticking down a little farther than normal.
Okay.
But it's sticking down to the point, so I'm getting a nice flat edge on there. So I'm actually going to...
With that screw, if you tighten that, does that actually take the center of it closer,
Yes.
farther down?
So I'm going to reset this because I think the iron's just sticking down a little too much. So I just want this to just touch the wood. Tighten that. Oop, turning it the wrong way. Turn it the right way. There we go. And now I'm not getting anything. So I can take this back screw and I can turn it tight. And I'm basically putting pressure in here and forming this into a shallow curve. And so as it moves, I'll get a little more. I'll put a little more pressure on there. And now I'm getting a spot in the middle where I'm getting really nice curls. And that's what I want. So you hold it the exact same way you would hold a card scraper with your thumbs behind there. It's just there's no pressure on your thumbs.
That's much easier.
And so you're just providing the forward force and it's holding in place. And you get curls. Now here's the thing where we got to test. So it works on oak. What does it do in pine? It won't work in this. I'm pretty sure that curl isn't that good.
Always that evil.
Let's see what we got here. Oh, wow. I'm actually getting a little curl there. It's not beautiful. I'm getting a little pilling. That's not bad. It's not bad.
So would you generally just not use a card scraper or cabinet scraper on pine?
I don't use pine. No, it is very, very, very rare that I ever use pine. It dents so easily that it just doesn't make great furniture. It's cheap, it's quick to work with, it's easy for most woodworking tools. But if you're doing things at that level, then you're usually not worrying about the absolute perfect fine finish on it because it's pine. You're never going to, it's not going to look great for a long time.
Okay.
And so usually the softest thing I work with is Filipino mahogany, which it's just soft enough that I can get my thumbnail into it, but not much.
Is it softer than poplar?
Most of the time it's a little harder than poplar. Poplar's probably the softest thing, but that's, I'm trying to think of what I would use poplar for. I use it for like drawer seconds, for the stock inside. What's that?
A bench top.
Yeah, a bench top. That's actually a really good one because you want something soft enough that's not going to ding up your work, and you don't care about being perfect. And so there's very few times where I would use a card scraper for a poplar project. So yeah. So what do you anything particular you have on that, or
No.
do you want to try something? What questions we got, babe?
Oh, let's see. I think you answered the when to plane, when to use a card scraper.
Well, actually, I hit that a little bit more because I didn't quite.
Okay, I thought you had.
Can you read the question just in case I missed?
Kind of deleted it. Anyways, the gist of it is, when would you plane and when would you use a card scraper?
The big benefit to card scrapers is if you sharpen it really well, it doesn't care about grain. And so if you have really squirrely, wavy grain, you can come into the card scraper and you can go across the grain, you can go with the grain, you can go against the grain, you're still going to get a nice clean surface because it's compressing the curl. You have a built-in chip breaker. And so it's really nice for that. The problem is if you set up a smoothing plane really, really well, and you take the time and you get it sharp, you're taking a nice, clean, thin shaving, chip breaker close, tight mouth, you can go through any grain with that. And you can get gorgeous, gorgeous stuff with a plane. But a plane can't get up tight to things. And so the real big place where card scrapers shine is being able to get up against a wall and scratch in a corner. Getting the glue out of the corner that's squeezed out. You can get this in and scrape the glue out. And that's where these really, really shine, is being able to get in the places that the plane can't get. And so that's probably where I use the card scraper more than anything else. Most of the time, if I'm doing a surface that's really squirrely or wavy grain, I'm going to get a plane and spend some time detailing it. I almost never use my cabinet scraper, just because I've gotten to the point with my planes, that skill's there. But you can see how easy this was to set up. And so if you haven't gotten your plane to the point where you can do that, then this is really nice.
So what percent of the time, like what percent of the finishing would you do with a plane, and then what percent with a card scraper?
You know, there's a lot of projects that I don't ever use a card scraper, just because a plane is all I need. If I can do it with a plane, I'd rather do it with a plane than a card scraper, because I have planes that are set up to do that. But again, there's some glue squeeze out, or something's really tight and I want to get in there and just scratch that little point. This works great, and that's probably where I use it more than anything else. Or there's tear out on that one spot, and I don't mind hogging it out a little bit. I just want to get a smooth surface and cleaned out. I'll bring this in just to hit that tiny spot. These are great for hitting. I want to hit a spot like the size of a quarter. I'll take this and I can get that. So with cabinet, I wanted to show this, that the cabinet scraper, the most common one you're going to see is the Stanley 80. And it's a really simple thing. You can actually buy the remakes of this on Amazon for like 30 bucks. Well, they used to be 30 bucks. And then COVID hit and everyone bought hand tools. So I don't know what they are now. But these are basically dirt cheap in comparison to a lot of things. And you can get a cheap one of these. They don't have to be perfectly flat. There's no geometry to this that's important. It's a hunk of metal, 3 bolts, and a plate on here. I actually have a couple old videos where I made them out of wood, and you can make them in a single day pretty easily. And so these work really well. The problem is the angle is set at that, and if you happen to burnish your angle at a slightly different angle, well, then you have to take it out and redo it.
I was wondering about that.
Whereas this is a Stanley number 12, and this one has the added benefit of you can adjust the angle on this by adjusting the nuts on here. And so I can bring this in and out to match the angle that I want. It's also a wider cutting surface, and it's up a little bit higher. And so this works really well for floors, except for you have to be on your hands and knees for it. And then they did make other versions with a stick, so you can do it from standing position and actually scrape the floors with one of these. So it's kind of a nice thing. I've actually never used this in a project.
It's really interesting. I've never seen one.
I have my Stanley 80, and so I probably use that just because it's set up and ready to go, and this I haven't actually set up to use, and so why? But yeah, these are like kind of fun. These are far more expensive though, less common. What's next, babe?
Let's see. Did Alex asked how to avoid chatter, what could be causing it sometimes. Did you talk about that?
Yeah, chatter can be caused from a bunch of different things. The easiest way to fix it is flex the plate more. Put a bigger bend into it. One of the things I didn't mention is the thickness of the plate. They come in a bunch of different thicknesses. You can get them really, really stiff, so you can't bend them at all. I know some people who will use old plane irons, and you can't bend them, but they can scrape. I like it to be, it takes a good bit of force to bend. What is it? What's the measurement he had on it? 0.032 inches. So I really like that. That's the measurement that I use more than anything else. You can get thinner ones that are really easy to bend, but I don't like them. They just feel a little more squirrely. So the more pressure you're putting into it, usually the better it will stick in the wood. But sometimes you'll get a lot of skipping when you work with pine, because it will stick in the wood and then suddenly it loosens up and then it moves forward a couple inches and sticks again, and you start getting that chattering. And most of the time that's because you're putting too much pressure into it, which is always the problem for me, because I'm used to really getting on top of it and putting some weight into it, and you can't do that with pine. You have to put in just the right amount of pressure. Trying to think of what else would be chattering. If it's dull and the hook isn't very good, and you're working with a really nice hardwood like maple, you'll get some chatter on that where it bounces around. But most of the time it's just because you don't have a flex in there. You're trying to keep it straight across and trying to do a flat area. Card scrapers are not designed to do a large flat area. They do, a 2-inch wide section at most. even though it's 6 inches across, you're only hitting a spot in the middle. So yeah, don't try and do the whole thing across. Another trick that where'd I put that? I have a magnet.
I was going to ask you about the magnet.
Yeah, I sell them on my website too. They're called Wood by Wright thumb savers. If you're doing it a lot and you're doing a lot of flat surface, you'll notice that this really heats up and your thumbs are close to the edge and close to each other, and the thumbs really start to burn. And I've worn out the fingerprint of my thumbs a few times from that. And so all you do is you get a refrigerator magnet, slap that on there, and that works really well. Or you could just get a hand plane set up and do that. What's next? How many questions do we have left?
I think I have 2 more on topic. I think you answered all of the ones Alex had.
Okay, we got 5 minutes left, so we can hit those 2 at least.
Okay.
We'll see.
Jose Morale asks, can you recommend a sharpening fixture bought or made?
A sharpening fixture. The only fixture I really know of with card scrapers is one that will hold the jig, hold the file. There's the word. We'll hold it at 90 degrees to the plate. And so there's what you can do is get a piece of wood. You grab a scrap, just something smaller than this, and you cut a groove in it that this will fit into. And now that board holds this at 90 degrees, and you can use that whole jig to then hit the end of it and make sure that this stays at 90 degrees because the plate is stuck up against this. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And there are a few companies that make that. Veritas makes them. I don't use them because I have never found a reason to make sure that stays dead on 90 degrees. If it tilts a degree or two, it really doesn't matter because you're going to be doing that here in a moment with the burnishing rod and cranking it down. And over that small of an area, a couple degrees really isn't going to make much of a difference.
Excuse.
No, I don't know of any particular jig that I would really recommend. Though there are a lot of them out there because card scraping is one of those things that there are 1,000 ways to do it, and I've really only shown a couple minimal ways that really work for me and have helped me show other people. But you may try those and find out that it just doesn't work for you. Try some other things. There are thousands of ways to do it, and there are thousands of jigs that are like, ooh, yeah, this will do it. You put it in there, and it works for some people, it doesn't work for others. Most of the time, the problem is the angle of your card scraper to the angle of how you burnished it. You get those two matched, and most of the time, it'll work. What's next?
Michael Rega asked, could you use a small piece of scrap 1x2 to apply equal pressure?
A scrap of 1x2.
I don't know for the card scrapers.
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about.
It was from a little while ago, sorry.
Place it along the back.
Oh, yeah, like a back. You could, but yeah, then again, you're trying to use the whole plate, and you just run into issues. The amount of force you need to make that wide of a cut is significant. And that's why most of the time, if you're doing that big of a thing, you're using a Japanese plane that you can get your whole body onto. Yeah, don't try and use the whole width of it. You just use small chunks of it at a time, and you cover more of this. These are designed for spot cleanup. This isn't really good for doing a whole tabletop. Yes, you can do it with that, but most of the time, if you need to do a whole tabletop, grab a cabinet scraper or a plane. This is for hitting that spot of tear out or getting into that corner and things like that. This isn't for doing big wide areas. So yeah. What's next?
The other questions I have would be off topic, so it's at 8:58 if you want to answer them.
Take one more.
Let's
make someone happy.
See, the RebelRobot. Have you ever used any of your hand tools to do carpentry projects around the house?
Oh yeah, yeah. Chisels get pulled out into all sorts of different things. I chase kids around the house, they're scaring them. No, I don't do that. Oh shit, that's a good idea. When I did the pergola in the back, I used my good bench chisels to cut out all the housing joints for that.
Mallets come out all the time.
Yeah, I've used planes for cleaning up doors and edges like that. There are all sorts of use, but not just for the shop. So, cool. Well, I think we're gonna wrap this up. Thanks for coming in, Kevin.
Thanks so much for having me.
This has been a lot of fun. And if you would like to be in a one-on-one live, I have a form below you can fill out, as well as I'll be using that to notify local people anytime we do a get-together or meetup. So fill that out, and you'll get onto the mailing list for that. So I think that'll do it for now. Anything I'm forgetting? Until next time, have a wonderful day.
Bye.